And I'm going to do live.
Week 4.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Definitions.
Okay, it looks like
Good.
we are live on YouTube as well.
Perfect. So hello and welcome to the Lost Confederacy channel. This is week 4 of the 13-week fiscal program for American Prisoners of War. You have myself, Chief Biko today, as well as Chief Quietwater. And here, as always, we focus more so on the first letter in the acronym APOW, which is American. I will go ahead and share my screen to allow Chief Quietwater to read off the 12 steps.
Okay. So step number 1, learn about the estate or estates your family originated from. Number 2, who established that estate. Number 3, what tribe and confederacy had jurisdiction over that area prior to the European. Number 4, ask all nonprofit organizations you attend, what's your position on reparations. Number 5, they either support it or they don't. No support, no money. However, if they support it, then children and adults need weekly classes free of charge about steps 1, 2, and 3. In addition to field trips to APOW landmarks in that city, county, and state are needed. Number 6, don't support European holidays for the remainder of the 13-week time frame. Number 7, avoid spending money with any small business that does not hire your people, gas stations, nail salons, subways, corner stores. Number 8, all businesses need operating cash. Spend money with American businesses. Number 9, all other groups rely on our energy and operating cash to survive. Set the trends of making other groups follow our lead and support our clubs, services, products, and entertainment. Number 10, the U.S. government is bankrupt. The Federal Reserve prints money, i.e. quantitative easing. It also burns money, i.e. quantitative tightening. The U.S. dollar hasn't been backed by gold since Richard Nixon in 1971, the Gold Standard Act. The government operates off full faith of its citizens to pay debts and taxes. American prisoners of war no longer have faith in the U.S. government. This is why financial support will be altered, stopped, and redirected. Number 11, teach your kids 1 hour a day about their history on this land. Have them learn about American Inventor. Have them know about our heroes. They should know the European that conquered the estate they live in. They should know the nation of people prior to European invasion militarily and culturally. Then number 12, practicing these steps will educate us on the land we're claiming America and attaches us to the history and laws of the U.S. government. Every estate American prisoners of war live in should have steps 1, 2, and 3 advertised via social media, radio, and newspaper. This in 13 weeks of one fiscal quarter will bring us together for our common cause.
Excellent. And as always, I guess, which of the steps kind of stood out to you today?
I would say number 10. I know that we talk about this on a weekly basis, pretty much, that the government is bankrupt. And, we have to get in our mind that it's only operating because we believe in it. And so as it says that financial support should be altered, stopped, and redirected, so that's the only way that I think that there's going to be any kind of major shift in regards to that. But we have to first understand and know that.
Completely agree. The one that kind of stood out to me this week is the one before, step 9, basically just saying all groups rely on our energy and operating cash. So kind of go hand in hand with step 10, just in regards to us, altering or stopping and redirecting, not only our cash flow, but our energy as well.
Right.
Let's focus that on ourselves, on our community. Let's build from there. Because because it's, I mean, we're laying down the steps and groundwork, how we can get out of this predicament we're currently in. If we aren't going to, pick up the gun and fight physically, then we have to fight on all other aspects and all other planes. So financially, mentally, and all other sorts.
Absolutely.
Stop there. And this week, I went ahead and found an American inventor from the early 1800s. I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, work. So here, this invention is from Norbert, not sure how to pronounce his last name, Rillieux or Rillieux. Seems to be definitely from Louisiana. He was born in New Orleans. His birthday is March 17th, 1806. He died October 8th, 1894. But this patent here pretty much was used, or this invention rather, was used to condense sugar and refine it. So he was able to like remove the juices from the sugar and pretty much make like the what do you call it, granulated sugar pretty much now.
Oh, okay.
So being able to pull the juice from the actual sugar cane and then get it down to a form where it could be used for cooking all types of stuff. And this invention is still used today as far as the process that he created. And that number, patent number is 3227, and patent date is August 26, 1843.
Can you repeat the patent number?
Patent number is 3237.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But yep, this is the invention
And
here.
what's the name of the actual thing? Is it the vacuum pan?
Vacuum pan. It's also can be known as the what was it? I believe they had it here. The multiple effect evaporator vacuum. So it's different names, but just for simple terms, just the vacuum pan. So just being able to vacuum out that liquid from the sugar cane, and then create the process for it to be pretty much not powdered sugar, but again that granulated sugar.
Okay.
And they use this process for like condensed milk. Pretty much a lot of different food items use his process.
Interesting.
So next we will go ahead and have the quote and have that read by Chief Quietwater. You need me to pull up the.
I have it here.
Perfect.
Okay, so I am going to do quote number 11 this week. So our advanced teachers, like most highly educated Negroes, pay little attention to the things about them except when the shoe begins to pinch on one or the other side. Unless they happen to become naked, they never think of the production of cotton or wool. Unless they get hungry, they never give any thought to the output of wheat or corn. Unless their friends lose their job, they never inquire about the outlook for coal or steel, or how these things affect the children they are trying to teach. In other words, they live in a world, but they are not of it. How can such persons guide the youth without knowing how these things affect the Negro community? And I think that's definitely important, just from what we do on a weekly basis. And what we have learned is that what we continuously say is that if we knew this information, or if we knew, that things that happened in the past, and this kind of correlates with that, because it's like we don't think about things until it's way past due or way past needed.
Absolutely, an excellent quote for this week. Was having a conversation with Chief Alligator, and it kind of pretty much rhymed with this. I told him pretty much I think we are highly schooled and undereducated in regards to just U.S. citizens in general, from our people to, again, the U.S. citizen, from the American to the U.S. citizen. And we kind of see it now just in our industries. We created these industries, but we aren't leading industries anymore, whether it be technology, whether it be food production, whatever the industry is, we're not seeing the American running those industries. And we also aren't seeing U.S. citizen run them. We're seeing a lot of Indian, a lot of Chinese or Asians running these industries. So we can see how they are, one, being educated on these things, but also they're applying that education at an early age.
Exactly. I
So
definitely agree.
they're getting that hand experience at the age of 16 versus somebody who's getting that experience at the age of 21 or 22, and that's via an internship or something
Exactly.
like
Right.
that. So yeah, it's definitely a great quote, and it rings true today that we don't think about the production of stuff until we actually see it affects us. So great quote for this week. I'll go ahead and continue with legal definitions and maroon historical points. Definition number 1, American, indigenous to America. Number 2, descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Number 3, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Number 4, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime. 5 is school, any institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. Education and enlightening experience. And last but not least, recovery, a return to a normal mind, normal state of health, mind, or strength, the action or process of regaining possession of something stolen or lost. And that's exactly what we do every Sunday, just trying to continue to recover back to that normal state of health, mind, and strength.
Exactly.
And as far as the maroon historical points, number 1, was a person escaping slavery, seeking freedom, or breaking the law. Number 2, providing unity and a strong defense came first. Number 3, maroon leaders were first and foremost military figures. Number 4, maroons established guerrilla warfare, planting sharp sticks and thick grass. And number 5, maroons knew their European enemies' language, defenses, and plans. And those are the legal definitions as well as maroon historical points. And lastly, before we jump into the newest document, go ahead and read off our articles here in the Constitution. So Article 1, Section 10 states and pretty much just highlights the biggest contradiction of them all, that there is no money, that the United States, again, no longer deals with their constitutional form of money, as we read, or as Quietwater read in Section 10 or number 10 of the 12 steps. And Section 10 reads the same: no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque, or in reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. So again, as Chief Quietwater read in the 12 steps, that gold and silver were taken out of the system. This system's foundation or founding document for this government states that only gold and silver coin can be payment of debts. So that's a direct contradiction of what is going on currently and what happened in 1971 when the gold and silver were taken out. Because obviously we always get, build things, or if you're paying a mortgage or paying towards a debt, we're using either cash, check, or really some digital numbers to quote these debts, when that's not even actually happening, because we're no longer, one, dealing with gold and silver, and 2, the money is no longer backed by gold and silver. So again, just highlighting here that the United States is broke, and that we need to redirect our energy towards something else in regards to the finances of things. If we're going to use this form of money, let's go ahead and pool it together to actually accumulate gold and silver as a community. Section 2, President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states. So here in Section 2, it's just listing off the actual powers of the president. We all know, via in grade school or middle school, that the president was AKA the commander-in-chief of the Army, Navy, pretty much of the military forces. But what a lot of us didn't know, I can speak for myself, is that he was the commander-in-chief of the militia as well. So whenever we see these unidentified groups of armed men who are, again, part of the Army, Navy, National Guard, nothing like that, but they seem to have some protection, we best believe that they are militia. And who is the one that commands them? That would be the president. So again, we have to understand the rules of this system in order to actually get out of this system and actually win this actual game we're playing in. And last but not least, Article 6. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made pursuant thereof, and all treaties made shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And any judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. So basically what it's saying here in paragraph 2, Article 6, is that the treaty is the supreme law of the land, and that all of the judges in every state shall be bound thereby to that treaty, or to that law, which would be, or that supreme law, which would be that treaty. So anything to the contrary is null and void. But we obviously see that is not the case, because we've read multiple treaties, within pretty much now last year, within that one fiscal year, that they continue to not abide by and things of that nature. So again, we, one, can't contract with this group of people, this government, and two, they don't even abide by their own foundation of laws. So why? So again, stop trying to put your faith into a government that doesn't even play by its own rules. And that's one thing that we continuously see from our highly educated individuals. They know the law, like the back of their hand.
Exactly.
But for some reason, it's not registering that, but this doesn't apply to your group.
Exactly.
The law apply to the US citizens, specifically the Europeans, the Asians, ones that we aren't really having under military occupation. So once hopefully our highly educated understand that and say, okay, we know the rules, we know how it's supposed to be ran, but it's not running that way. Maybe they aren't working because of who we are, which is the American.
Yeah. And I don't think it's because of their lack of understanding. I think that it's a financial gain for them to continue to play the game, knowing what the real is.
Correct. Absolutely. So this here is the next document we will go ahead and jump into. This is the Curtis Act of 1898. Here we're going to just pretty much read through the, I guess you can call it the preamble, pretty much the beginning here. And I'll go ahead and start from the top. Protection of the people of Indian Territory. Letter from the Acting Secretary of the Treasury, transmitting a communication from the Secretary of the Interior, submitting an estimate of appropriation, $106,600, to carry into effect the provisions of the Act of June 28, 1898. 30 stat for page 495, entitled An Act for the Protection of the People of the Indian Territory and for Other Purposes. So here, December 14th, 1898, referred to the Committee on Appropriations and ordered to be printed. Treasury Department, Office of the Secretary, Washington, D.C., December 15th, 1898. We have SIE. I have the honor to transmit herewith, for the consideration of Congress, a communication from the Secretary of the Interior of the 10th instant, submitting an estimate of appropriation, $106,600 to carry into effect the provision of the Act of June 28, 1898, entitled An Act for the Protection of the People of the Indian Territory and for Other Purposes, the same being the remainder of the fiscal year ending June 30th, 1899. and which from the pressing need of the said appropriation be request that it be provided in the urgent deficiency bill now pending. Respectively yours, and that from the acting secretary O.L. Spalding. Next, we have here the President of the Senate, Department of the Interior, Washington, D.C., December 10th, 1898. That the Congress entitled an act for the protection of the people of the Indian Territory and for other purposes, approved June 28th, 1898, imposes certain duties upon the Commission to the 5 civilized tribes and the Secretary of the Interior, but makes to protection of the people, but makes no appropriation of any monies to enable this department to execute the same. Section 11 of said act declares that the commission heretofore appointed under acts of Congress and known as the Dawes Commission shall proceed to allot the exclusive use and accompany occupancies of the surface of all the hands of the several nations or tribes susceptible of allotment among the citizens thereof. So here they're referring back to that Dawes Act that we just pretty much read, and they're basically saying that they're going to go ahead and start, I'm guessing, allocating to how they had divided it up based off of, tribes and the different members that came into that territory.
And it seems here that the tribes have lost pretty much all of any control that they even remotely had in regards to this, because they're appointing people for this thing and that thing. So it's like they have lost even more control of their land.
Correct. I know one of the last things we finished reading off in the Dawes Act was saying how, like you stated, they already didn't have control of where they could go as far as on that territory. They were getting sectioned off in these subdivisions and these what do they call them, sections, 1/4 of a section, but then also that they didn't even have control of the life source in those areas, which would have been the water. I know that's something that Chief Blackcoat had highlighted. They were pretty much acting as the water authority for the Indians in that territory. So like you said, they have no control over pretty much the land or the life substance that would be provided for that land, which would be that water. Section 12 requires said allotments to be confined or be confirmed by the Secretary of the Interior. So again, as Chief Quietwater stated, they have to pretty much, or people that actually have the power are all from the U.S. government. Secretary of Interior, that's not a Indian territory representative. This is a representative of the United States. And again, requires they have to be confirmed by the Secretary of Interior. So any of those allotments that are given to these quote unquote 5 civilized tribe members have to be approved or confirmed by the Secretary of Interior. Under Section 13 thereof, the Secretary of the Interior is required to make rules and regulations in regards to the leasing of oil, coal, asphalt, and other minerals, and to fix the amount of royalty to be paid by the, looks like lessees or lessees. So here, again, Secretary of Interior not only has to confirm the allotments, but also makes the rules and regulations of what is going to be done within these territories. And in particular, in regards to the oil, coal, as well as asphalt and other minerals. So we can kind of see we're getting into that industrial age of things as well. So as we always state, when we created these industries, now since they have roped us off, have taken away, stripped us of our identity and taken away our inventions, now they're creating industries off these inventions, and they're going to be regulated by the US government. So the things that our ancestors created are now being ran by the US citizens and then regulated by the US government. Here.
And I kind of looked up what the Secretary, because I never knew what the Secretary of Interior, what their role was. And basically it says that in consultation with Congress and the White House, well, I guess it wasn't the White House back then, but the Secretary of the Interior manages the use of public lands, prevent exploitation of natural resources, which that's exactly what they're actually doing. Maintain national parks and national monuments, and implements other various forms of environmental protection. So it's like they kind of built a shelter under the guise of, you know, having this entity to look over the tribe's land.
Correct. They built a, you could say, a industry,
Mhm.
you know, making sure the Americans in these areas or these territories are regulated. And
Exactly.
you just read, that's something that still exists today.
Right.
Secretary of the Interior, you know, and there's a line of secession, I guess you could say, to say, okay, if the president were to pass, then the vice president, then it would be the secretary, I believe the Secretary of State, and then it would go down, and on that list is the Secretary of Interior. I believe they're like
Wow.
maybe number 15. I think like maybe second or third from last, but they're on
the list.
they're on that list of secession. So it kind of makes sense why they're given so much reign over certain
Exactly.
jurisdictions. So great point. Great that you looked up that information there. I'll continue here at the leases. Rules and regulations have been prepared under said section and also under the agreement set out in section 29 of said act, which require all mineral leases to be approved by, again, the Secretary of Interior. So section 15 requires that a commission shall be appointed for each town in the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Cherokee nations, and prescribes the manner of laying out town sites by said commissions where the towns have a population of 200 or more, and designates the way in which owners of improvements upon town lots may acquire title thereto. So this section here, basically what we're reading thus far just sounds like the who has power over these certain jurisdictions, you could say, or certain elements within the Indian Territory. Majority of them seem to be from the Secretary of Interior. So I believe that would be the highest form or highest authority they can go to before, of course, going outside of that jurisdiction. So Secretary of Interior seems to be the king piece or queen piece in regards to the Indian Territory. And it's saying here that it is required that a commission shall be appointed. So not, again, they're required to have someone from the US government appointed to each of the tribes.
Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense.
They are totally being supervised or under the supervision of another nation. So it even brings the question, or, you know, prompts the question, are they really a nation if they have to continue to answer to a higher authority? You know, those are no longer negotiations, those are just trickle
Orders,
down.
basically.
Yeah, orders, exactly, trickle down orders from the
Right.
top. Let's see, land designate there too. The provisions of this section relative to the Choctaw and Chickasaw nations are modified by the agreement in said section 29 of the act, to the extent that only one such commission consisting of 2 members each shall be appointed for said nations respectively. But said agreement expressly declares that no charge or claim shall be made against the Choctaw or Chickasaw tribe by the United States for the expense of surveying and planting or platting the lands and town sites, or for grading, appraising, and allotting the lands, or for appraising and disposing of the town lots as herein provided. So it looks here that the Chickasaw and Choctaw have a different agreement. And this will probably be something we have to go back, or that was referenced in the Indian Treaty, because that was specifically for the Chickasaw and Choctaw, as well as the Kansas Americans. But it says here that, what did it say? extent that only
They
one.
can't, oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No,
That
go
no
ahead.
charge or claim shall be made against them, is that what you,
Yeah,
okay,
against them. For, I guess, these purposes. So as far as being survey the land, I guess make any improvements to the land, whether it's like grading the land, making sure it's smoothed out, making sure everything is stable, appraised, and any of those type of things, they won't be charged for. Like the other tribes that they pretty much listed.
right. I can pick up section 16.
Okay.
Alrighty. Section 16 makes it unlawful for any person to claim for his own use or for the use of anyone else any royalty or minerals or on any timber or lumber or any other kind of property whatsoever, and declares that all royalties and rents hereafter payable to the tribe shall be paid under such rules and regulations as may be prescribed by the Secretary of the Interior into the Treasury of the United States to credit of the tribe to which they belong. So they're just totally removing the tribe out of the whole transaction, basically, because it has to go, number one, through the Secretary of the Interior and then into the Treasury of the United States as a credit of the tribe.
Dang.
So it's not even, they're not even really a part of the transaction.
Correct.
But said section contains a provision which allows any citizen to receive the rent upon agricultural or grazing lands to the amount of his reasonable share, and that to which his wife and minor children are entitled in the allotments provided for by said act. So what does that mean? But said section contains a provision
One
which,
thing really just standing out to me is this, rent on road.
right,
They're not even, again, if we're going back to, gold and silver, being payable for debts. If you're renting something, you're not actually paying towards ownership. So
right,
there's even writing it in that this isn't to own, this is
exactly.
to pay to stay.
And it's
basically.
their land.
Exactly.
Okay, the provisions of this section are modified so far as the Choctaw and Chickasaw nations are concerned, but the provisions of the agreement in section 29 of said act with respect to the duty of disposing of town sites and the collection of royalties from leases of mineral lands as therein provided. Okay. So let me see the provision. So the section 19 is within this document is what they're referencing. I'm assuming. Okay. So section 19 of said act prohibits the payment of any money or any account by the United States to any officer of the tribal governments for disbursement and requires the payment of all sums to the individual members of said tribes under the direction of the Secretary of Interior. So again, just putting the Secretary of Interior in charge of anything that has to do with money. In relationship to the tribes, they're basically allocating, and not to say that they're doing it in good faith towards they could be skimming off the top before they even disperse the money. So section 20 allows the Dawes Commission to employ necessary clerical assistance, including competent surveyors, to make allotments. Requires said commission to make correct rolls of citizenship of several tribes, which rolls, when approved by the Secretary of Interior, are declared to be final. Okay, so why would the Secretary of Interior have anything to do with citizenship rolls? That's a little confusing to me.
And like, I guess just even jumping back to what was that section 19, it's like, okay, they're prohibiting the payment of any of the monies from the United States directly to these tribal governments. So like he was stating, who's to say, that's just basically saying, okay, I got to touch your money before you touch it. And they could say, no, this is all you get based on XYZ. XYZ is illegal talent. And then here, and again, just another power of the Secretary of Interior has to approve or pretty much declare and make final any of the tribes, people becoming citizens. That what I'm
Right. That's what it sounds like. Yeah. So what authority would they have when they're over the land portion of
Mhm.
what their title entails? Okay. Section 27 authorizes an Indian inspector to be located in the Indian Territory to perform any duties relating to affairs therein under the direction of the Secretary of State. So basically, everything is falling up under the Secretary of State.
And then here, like Indian inspector, we just know that as a Indian agent, basically.
Right,
So we're going to
exactly.
plant, it's authorized to plant
Mhm.
in that territory. And then what are they doing? Performing the duties as directed by the Secretary of Interior.
Secretary of State.
So people, if it's not obvious that this is military occupation, then I'm not sure what else we need to do as far as
Exactly.
explaining this and showing it. Because again, the Americans have no power.
At
These
all.
are all the rules and regulations being set by the US government, and they're given all the power to run this quote unquote Indian territory to the Secretary of Interior. And they're pretty much able to have free reign.
Right. And it's, just correlating it or attaching it to today's times, that Indian inspector is in today's world that one American that they give power to, to do X, Y, Z. And, you've come up if you've made it there, and then they don't do anything to help collectively the other Americans. It's just they have this title, just like this Indian inspector has the title to be this important person, but it still has to go through the Secretary of Interior. So they really don't have the power either.
They still have to answer to a higher authority, which is planned by, again, the US government. And it, like you said, just highlights even to today, the Congressional Black Caucus. They say,
Right.
they'll say, yes, the police brutality and things of all that that's going on, and our people starving out, but then they'll say, but we gotta vote.
Exactly.
Like, how can you say one thing and say the other? You voting for the same system that is causing the pain.
Exactly.
You're the enemy. So again,
Right.
Chief Quietwater stated, these Indian inspectors are the American congresswoman or man who's continuing to, but you gotta vote. That's the only way we could change some things.
Exactly.
That's not the case. Great point there, great point. Did you want to pick up on 29 and I'll pick up on the next one?
Yep. Okay. So section 29, containing the agreement with the Choctaw and Chickasaw tribes, which has been duly ratified, declares that the United States shall survey and definitively mark and locate the 98 meridian of the west longitude between the Red and Canadian rivers before allotment of the lands herein provided for shall begin.
So they're sectioning off their territory pretty much. Moreover, the agreement confirmed by the Act of Congress approved July 1st, 1898, requires the land of the Seminole tribe to be allotted under the supervision of the Commission to the 5 civilized tribes without charge or claim against said tribe. No appropriation was made to carry out provisions of this law, and the Secretary of the Interior was obliged to organize a division in his known as the Indian Territory, which has charge of all business relating to the Indian Territory, and to assign clerical force to said division, notwithstanding they could not be well spared from the places in which they were regularly employed. We'll stop right here because this kind of caught my eye here, that the Seminole tribes, again, won't be charged or held with claim, but also no appropriations will be made, looks like, for the Seminole tribes. So as it kind of read earlier when it was saying the appropriation of, I believe it was $106,000, $106,600, to be appropriated. Let's see. Submit an estimate of appropriation to carry the provisions to these specific tribes. They're excluding, looks like, the Seminole tribe in this particular instance. So no appropriation was made to carry out the provisions of this law. That's interesting there. You can see, I think I stopped here. These details should be no longer continued, but specific appropriation made by Congress for the employees necessary to carry out or carry on the work of the new division. So they're basically going to be making sure that they are accounting for these new jobs that have been created underneath this Secretary of Interior. So we have one here, I believe it was the Indian Territory Division. And then, let me see. I know they had clerical.
Oh, yeah, right.
So they're just creating, again, industries off of our occupation or our confinement underneath this government. In order to properly execute the provisions of said acts, it is imperatively necessary that appropriations be made for the remainder of the fiscal year as follows. So now we're going to break down the actual jobs and their payment. So salary of Chief Indian Territory Division at $2,250 per year. What per annum is to June 30th, 1898. Let's see, one clerical class of $900. That's how much they're going to be making a year. One clerical class, that was one clerical class 4, one clerical class 3, payment of $800 within that year. Two clerk class 1, payment of $1,200, and one copyist with annual payment of $450. In the office of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, pay of employees Indian Territory to June 30th next, $4,000. Incidental and traveling expenses to June 30th next, $1,500. Salary and expenses of revenue inspectors to June 30th next, $3,000. And the salary and expenses of 2 school supervisors to June 30th next is $2,500, so $2,500. Additional employees in the Office of Commissioner of Indian Affairs during present fiscal year to be appointed under such rules and regulations and upon such examination as the Secretary of the Interior may prescribe. That is going to be allotted $9,300. Salary and expenses, town site commissions, $30,000. Locating 98th Meridian under the supervision of the Director of the Geological Survey of $6,300 to begin allotment, $50,000. So that's the total, and that's how they came up with this total of $106,600. So here we just pretty much broke down of who are the employees or who the employees are underneath the Secretary of Interior and pretty much the Indian Territory Division. So I just broke it down, and as we saw, they're just hiring school teachers, hiring inspectors, anything you need to set up your trial or your town, pretty much, or your city, of how you want it there. And as we can see here, very detailed, and again, accounting for everything.
Everything, right.
They have the start date, end date, have the total amount. So very detailed in regards to this. In view of very pressing need appropriation of the several sums as above set forth, in order that this department may duly execute the provisions of said acts of June 28th, 1898 and July 1st, 1898, which are mandatory. I have the honor to request that you will transmit said estimates to Congress in order that the same may be placed upon the urgent deficiency bill now pending. A copy of the report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs is enclosed herewith. Very respectively, and this is the acting secretary Dawes Ryan, and Secretary of Interior.
Wow,
You know,
very detailed. Yep.
very detailed. Indeed. Sure.
Okay. You want me to pick up here?
Yeah, you can pick up.
Okay. Department of the Interior, Office of the Indian Affairs, Washington, December 9th, 1898. Sir, I have the honor to acknowledge receipt of your, okay, so this is basically his response to the proposal, I guess. So, sir, I have the honor to acknowledge receipt of your communication of the 19th ultimo inviting attention to the act approved June 28th, 1898 for the protection of the people of the Indian Territory and for other purposes, known as the Curtis Act, and directing that an estimate be prepared of the amount needed under the special provision of said act and any others for which, in the judgment of this office, additional appropriation is needed, and submit it to the department for consideration. One thing that stands out is when they, what does it say? So the protection of people of the Indian Territory and for other purposes. It's like they put that general clause in there so they can just dump anything else in there that they want to pretend like they're doing, or, you know, all along taking the money and taking the land, basically.
Little catch-all clause, like if you forgot anything else, that would fall under the other purposes.
Right, exactly. Okay. Upon receipt of this letter, the United States Indian Inspector in the Indian Territory was called upon to submit an estimate of what would be needed to carry out the provisions of that act and of that act at the end of the line. This he has done and reports by telegram as follows. Clerks, inspector, and agent's office, including present force, 8,000. Revenue inspectors, Creeks and Cherokees, 6,000. 2 school supervisors and expenses, Creeks and Cherokees, 5,000. 2 for Choctaw and Chickasaws considered payable from the Coles royalties. Traveling expenses, agent making payments, 3,000. Town site commissions, sections 15 and 29, salaries not designated, estimated 30,000, total 52,000, 1/2 necessary from January to June, allotment commissioners and appraisers not included. So again, basically them just accounting for everything in every position that they are looking to fill and to pay. And the communication to the department enclosed in department letter of 30th ultimo, the director of the Geological Survey submits an amended estimate of the amount needed to survey, locate, and mark the 98 meridian of west longitude. He had on the 18th of October reported that the estimated cost of surveying and establishing the 98 meridian and obliterating the marks and corners upon the existing boundary line and making a subdivision survey is as follows. Field work, 98 meridian, 2,500, subdivision, 1,750, examination, 425, office work, 98 meridian, 200, subdivision, 325, with a total of 5,200. His amended estimate is as follows. As telegraphic facilities can be obtained at numerous railway stations near the 98th meridian, one longitude station can be located at either extremity or midway between the extremities as desired. The field expenses for the astronomical work, including those for personal equation observations at the Washington University, St. Louis, and the salary of the observer at the St. Louis will amount to $450. Salary of the observer in the field, $250, with a total cost for one station, $700. It will be more exact, however, to locate longitude stations, one just south of the Canadian, the other just north of the red, at an additional cost for the second station of $400. So just further accounting where they're going to put the stations, I guess.
Yeah, just looks like, from that earlier proposal in regards to what they estimated the cost to be, specific, I guess, for this 98th Meridian. It's like they amended some of it and broke down even, I guess, in even more detail of what everything would actually cost here. So yeah, just a basic accounting of what they'll need to make sure that everything goes as planned as far as just setting up the different divisions and jobs within these Indian territories.
Right. Okay. Let me see, where did I end up at?
Was it 1,000?
Okay. This sum added to the estimated cost of the field work and office work subdivided, etc., as per estimate of October 18th, namely 5,200, makes a total for the location and marking of the meridian of 6,300. In the annual report of the Dawes Commission, quoted in the last report of the Honorable Secretary of the Interior, the commission states that the roles of the Seminoles are about complete, so that the commission may at any time, when provided with means, begin the work. So basically, this is kind of giving them the authorization to actually start the work. Begin the work of the allotment according to the provision of the agreement. But in order to do this appropriation, at least 50,000 is believed to be necessary for employment of adequate assistance therefore.
Yeah. So like you were saying, this pretty much is kind of giving them the go ahead to start doing whatever type of a building or pretty much building and employment of people. And at least 50,000 is believed necessary or adequate, therefore, for that assistance. Let's see here. I'll pick up here if we want the exceedingly.
Okay.
The exceedingly large amount of additional work imposed upon this office by the act referred to renders it absolutely essential. Let me see. The exceedingly large amount of additional work imposed upon this office by the act referred to renders it absolutely essential that additional force should be provided immediately. Within the last decade, the work at this office has fully doubled without a corresponding increase in its clerical force. So they seem to be undermanned at this point to account for pretty much it's in the Americans and whoever is in that Indian territory. The extent of Indian service, growth, and the causes that led to it are noticed in a report made by Mr. Sherman, chairman of the House Committee of Indian Affairs, to Congress on January 5th, 1897. House Report number 2,383, 54th Congress, second session. As to its extent, the report says the extent of the Indian Department is not generally appreciated. While the Bureau in Washington is small, the outside department is almost coextensive with the country itself, extending as it does from the Gulf of California to the Great Lakes and from Florida to Puget Sound and even beyond. It embraces territory greater in extent, if taken together, than all the New England states, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland combined, and an Indian population of nearly, if not quite, 250,000. I'll stop here. So what I'm getting here is that they're just showing the mass amount of Americans on this land. And he pretty much is comparing, what the requirement needed, I guess, as far as employees in DC or at the Capitol, I believe he said, in Washington, or the Bureau in Washington, versus what's needed to actually account for all of these Americans in the, Indian territory by the Secretary of Interior is not even on the same playing field.
Exactly, right.
Account for your small segment of, people in the England area or even scattered in these states, but we're going to need a lot more manpower to account for these Americans. And that kind of even rings with why they were saying, you know, come over to the Americas, live that American dream.
Right.
You need employees.
Exactly.
We need people to
Exactly.
do the work. So it kind of even rhymes today, like, hey, America's open. All of the immigration,
Mhm.
all of the immigrants coming to America to again run these industries.
Right.
Now it starts to even make more sense. Like nothing is history is just rhyming. That's what
Exactly.
history is just rhyming. Let me see. Now finish off here. The condition, character, and habits of the Indians occupying this territory are almost at various as the tribes themselves. The occupations of those in one part of the country are entirely dissimilar to the occupations of those in another, depending largely upon their surroundings. In some sections, they excel as fishermen, in others stock raising, and others agriculture. So again, this is just showing what I'm getting, the what is the word? I guess ingenuity of our people. Just to be put again, a lot of these places aren't their, I guess you could say, respective homelands or territories. We know that majority of them were sent from the Creek Confederacy, so the southeast region of North America, into this area. And what he's pretty much describing is that they all pretty much were masters at various different things. Some excel at being fishermen, some excel at, stock raising, so raising stock and cattle. And some are good at, farming the land, basically same as plantations, planters, they're good with, the earth. So he's saying like, it's, these different segments or different tribes of Americans, they're very, they're not alike. They're not just one size fits all. Various different tribes do different things or partake in different vocations, I guess you could say. That's interesting there. What do you get from that there, Chief Quietwater?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a diverse group. Everyone has their own specialty and what they are capable of doing, and very skilled in what they're doing as well, which is why they're using them for the needs of what they're trying to accomplish.
For sure, for sure. Let me see. I think this is probably a good stopping point for us. Only got a page and I guess 2 pages left. Looks
Okay.
like they'll be talking about some more accounting, and then we'll get into as if I guess the growth issue. But definitely, I think that's a great stopping point and a good place to actually just help us realize, who we are. Like we can make something out of nothing, and that even rhymes with today. Like we are the least, we're given the least resources, but we are probably the most resourceful people, if that makes sense. So we do the most of what we have. And that just kind of rhymes with we're from here, man. We know how to make things happen when we need to. And again, just to make sure that we're disassociating ourselves from this lazy narrative, from this slave narrative, from this, we're nothing but a bunch of this ghetto narrative, because even the word ghetto, like we think that's something that is I guess rhymes or is a synonym for Black people, when that's not the case. The word ghetto actually refers to the Jewish people. And don't believe this, you can go ahead and pull that up. So again, it just kind of rhymes with us, not always just believing everything that somebody says. So I'll pull up the definition here. Of course, a noun. Let me see here. Part of a city, especially a slum area occupied by a minority group or groups, historically the Jewish quarter in a city, Warsaw Ghetto. So again, doesn't say anything about Black people or niggas or African Americans. They specifically say Jewish because that's what the term or the word was coined for, Jewish people living in a quarter in a city. So again, just even that, just like, okay, we have to stop putting these curses on ourselves in regards to these certain words, and whether it be through music,
Right.
through you know, TV or photography, wherever it may be, we have to stop, associating ourselves with these negative terms, because then all that does is just feed into one stereotype, and it feeds into the psyche that we aren't shit and never have been, when that's
Exactly.
completely the opposite of who we are and what we are. So I definitely wanted to highlight that today.
Good class tonight.
For sure,
Very
for sure.
informative.
So we'll pick up next week.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna stop